Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast. This is your escape for real, unscripted conversations about sports, hobbies, life, and storytelling. No scripts, no forced takes, just Man Cave talk. Now, here's your host, Dan Kasper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Man Cave Podcast. I am Dan Kasper. As always, a big thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, where we are going to talk a little college hoops. I'm going to go through every pick on my brackets. Don't copy me, because it'll probably be wrong here and such. But, hey, it's one of my favorite times of the year, right? I still remember doing my first bracket. I was actually... Was I in high school? I must have been a freshman. No. Regardless, I think the first bracket I ever did had to have been when the Badgers went to the Final Four as an 8 seed with Dick Bennett, and Michigan State won it that year. Because I just remember I actually got 3 of the 4 Final Four teams that year. And that was at a point where I wasn't the biggest college basketball fan. I was more into the NBA at that point in time. But I think maybe that's what got me addicted and hooked to college basketball and March Madness and brackets and such. So, but yeah, and I remember filling that out. And then I think it was because I would have been in, I think, 8th grade that year. And then I think the following year when I was a freshman in high school, I wanted to do my own bracket challenge with my friends. So I think we just took some pieces of paper and made the bracket out and drew it out ourselves or something like that. It was a long time ago. So, but ever since then, yeah. And I remember I would always run the brackets pool challenge for fun, of course, with my buddies and such all the way through college and that, but even a little bit after college and that. But now it's a little bit easier. We do it on the radio station website, sportstalk1051.com. So if you're listening to this and you still got some time to fill out the brackets, join in our challenge. All right, just click on that Fan Cave tab when you go to the website, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and get your bracket in. So it's that simple. But I'm going to go through my brackets coming up here just a little bit. But I want to lead it off talking some baseball here because next week it is opening day. But the World Baseball Classic is officially in the books. And I got to tell you, I was excited, intrigued at the beginning of the World Baseball Classic. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to watch. I'm going to pay attention to this. And it blew my butt off. It blew my socks off. The environment that you could just tell watching it on TV, the way the players bought in, the way that, the fans were into it. I mean, just the overall atmosphere of it all was just it was awesome. I'm kind of struggling a little bit to maybe come up with the proper way to describe. I flipping loved it. And I was watching it with my kid Hudson, and it was like playoff baseball. It was like World Series baseball. And I'm not saying it's better than the World Series or anything like that. I know that's a debate going on right now with Jeter and such. But it was just, I think, a good reminder, though, too, of just how global the game of baseball is. Right? I mean, with Team Venezuela winning it, and, I mean, you look at the champions over the years, Japan, the previous champion, Team USA before. Team USA again was favored to win it, but you see, and then you get Team Italy, the Cinderella tournament. You see all these countries' teams and just the talent and the love and the passion for the game of baseball, and just watching some of these and to see all the stars buy into this. And even after, the World Baseball Championship game, seeing Team USA and their stars down and upset and that they lost. I mean, they were in this thing. they wanted this thing. Every team, every country wanted this thing, and it was awesome. And I'm struggling for a little bit to try to catch or try to find that proper, I think, word or phrase to sum it all up. But a huge tip of the cap to the two people that really spearheaded this World Baseball Classic in the early 2000s. And that was Gene Orza, who, with the Major League Baseball Players Association, he really pushed for it. And Bud Selig bought into, former commissioner. So those two, tip of the cap. It was something that they pushed for and started after it was announced that baseball was not going to be with the Olympics anymore. I don't know if that could eventually change, if the Olympic Committee looks at this World Baseball Classic and sees, wow, this could be something here. And because I think it is. I really think it is something. And I think, now there's a lot of talk. How do you make it bigger? How do you make it maybe better? Do you move it? Do you move it into the regular season, like the halfway mark, kind of like the Olympics with hockey and such? And I don't know if you do that. I don't think teams would necessarily buy into that. I kind of like where it's at right now because, no offense to spring training, it could get a little long. And as a fan, it could be like, okay, yeah, spring training, could we just get to the regular season? This was kind of a nice filler. I don't know, just kind of a nice filler. And I think for some of the main players or the players who are participating in this, it kind of maybe it's a good prelude to a season. Kind of gets maybe a little bit more checked in right away, dialed in right away, motivated right away or such. But it's competitive baseball before the Major League Baseball season begins. So I kind of like it as a prelude to a upcoming long baseball season. And it's not every year that we're doing the World Baseball Classic, obviously. So it's kind of like, you begin with a big worldwide tournament, and then, of course, you end with the World Series. So I kind of like it the way it is, but I understand the talk and the debate out there about whether to move it, to try to make it bigger, try to make it better if they could. But I mean, again, I think a big tip of the cap to Gene Orza and Bud Selig and all the original visionaries of this World Baseball Classic, and for everybody involved in it now. I mean, just kind of watching that championship game in the intro, I mean, that was electric with the two teams going down the foul lines and introductions, carrying their teams' flags and spotlight. That just kind of gives you chills, gives me a little bit of chills thinking about it. Again, rewatching it, it was so well done. There was so many great moments and so many highlights and such. And you could just tell the big thing when it comes to stuff like this, and especially like all-star games or tournaments or something like that, can the players buy in? Because if the players buy in, fans are going to buy in. Because as fans, we could tell whether a player cares or not, or whether they're given effort or not. And you 100% could tell players were buying in. They cared. They wanted that. And that translates to, full-on efforts. They're playing their butts off. They're trying to do their best. And then that's what gets fans to buy into. If it's a good product on the field, and it was a fantastic product on the field. So I think this is a home run, no pun intended. I just think this is one of the better events out there outside of like a normal regular season game. When we talk about, tournaments, NCAA tournaments, NFL playoffs, NBA playoffs, throw whatever you want, all-star games in this. If this isn't the best, it's top 5. And you look at this point in time of the calendar, I mean, you want to talk about 2026 and how the year is beginning in 2026 for the sports world. I mean, for crying out loud, you begin it with the Super Bowl. You want to go into a little auto racing. You get the Daytona 500. You've got the Winter Olympics. You've got the World Baseball Classic. NFL free agency is always kind of an event now, too. Opening day in baseball is coming up. You got the Masters in golf. You got the NFL draft. The NBA regular season. NHL is regular season going to start to wind down here and get into the postseason. I mean, the beginning of 2026 has just, from a sports side of things, has been insane in a good way. You know what I mean? Like, there's been a lot of, if you're a diehard sports fan and you can't get enough of all different types of sports, you have been treated. I mean, because there's a ton going on. And it doesn't happen every year where it lines up this way. You know, a lot of times already, March and April, in my opinion, is my favorite time of the year for the sports calendar. Others prefer maybe October because you got actual games going on and such. But I kind of combine March and April because you got March Madness, you've got opening day of baseball, you've got the Masters, you've got the NFL draft and NFL free agency, NBA, NHL games, wrapping up in the regular season, getting into the postseason. But in 2026, you add in kind of, I know the Winter Olympics ended at the end of February, but then, you know, you throw in a World Baseball Classic into the month of March. I mean, it's been awesome. And I think, maybe the last two World Baseball Classics with Team USA losing in the championship game, I'm sure it's probably going to eat at them for a little bit and maybe get them to dial in a little bit more too. And it's something that they're always going to have to battle with at this point in time if they continue to do the tournament before the regular season starts. Teams are going to have a say, especially when it comes to pitchers, how much they're able to throw out that pitcher or how often that, that player is going to be able to play and such. It's going to be a thing. And I don't think you could do it after the regular season either because, then you got to wait for the World Series. And you just got, I think guys at that point are just, let's get to the off season, need to recover, need to just take a step back and take a break. And the thing is, a lot of the younger guys will go back to their home countries and play winter baseball too. So some players play all year long, but not everybody, especially not like the veterans and the well-established players and such. So that's a little bit different in that aspect. But what the World Baseball Classic, I think, did too was really put some of the younger prospects, younger players, maybe a little bit of the unknown, but the risers on a national stage. And we got to hear those names a little bit more. So just insanely well done. Awesome job. And just really, really, really good games. And I'm full on ready for Major League Baseball season to get here. So, but we'll make baseball picks and regular season picks and all that sort of stuff a little bit later on. But I wanted to give a tip of the cap, and I kind of want to do that more often on the pod, kind of open up the pod. I think even maybe not as long of a segment like we did there, but just tip of the cap and try to look at the positive stuff about sports and such, and just take a look at, or just acknowledge a lot of the good things that sports does. So tip of the cap to the World Baseball Classic. And again, Bud Selig and Gene Orza for having the vision and kind of starting this thing, because I think it has been just amazing. And it continues, I think, to get bigger and better. So, but let's move on to some hoops chats. Speaking of one of the best times of the year, the NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Tournament. Selection Sunday was just a couple days ago. Brackets are all over the place. And, I don't have a problem with the one seeds. I think the selection committee did a decent job, to be honest with you. I personally, I haven't seen a lot of people complaining. I haven't really seen, once in a while, almost every year, it seems like, maybe not every year, but it feels like, okay, a lot of people are complaining this team's not in it, or that team should have been in it and they're not, or why is this team in there over this? I haven't really heard that. Maybe I'm just ignoring it and just putting my blinders on and such. And I'm sure there's going to be certain fan bases that are sitting there saying that their team should be in it and such. But I think, overall, I don't have a problem with the bracket. I think it sets up, and there's some intriguing stuff. I mean, you look at, Duke's region, for example. Duke is the top seed. You want to talk about like some icons and some legendary coaches in just that bracket alone. Shire is still young, but, I mean, he has done a fantastic job at Duke. I mean, to replace Coach K, to replace a legend amongst legends, and to have the success that he has had so far is insanely incredible. But we know it's a legendary program. That's the 1 seed. Then you got Hurley and UConn as the 2 seed. The 3 seed is Izzo in Michigan State. The 4 seed is Bill Self in Kansas. And then the 5 seed is Rick Pitino and St. John's. Legends all across the board. That is an insane East region. It is nuts. So, I mean, then you throw in a UCLA team who's a 7th seed in there. So, I mean, and then you got Louisville as a 6. But that is what really stood out to me looking at these different regions, looking at the brackets. You look at the South, you've got Florida as the top seed, Houston as the 2. The 3 seed is Illinois, and then 4 is Nebraska. I was honestly a little surprised that Nebraska came in as a 4. I guess if there was one thing I wouldn't, it's you're grasping at straws, or I mean, it's just nitpicking is what I'm trying to say. Maybe flip-flop those teams or whatever. But nonetheless, I was a little surprised that Nebraska was 4. I thought maybe they'd be a little bit higher. But nonetheless, Illinois, Nebraska, I could see either one of those teams advancing to a Final Four to represent the Big Ten. And I look at the West region with Arizona as the top team. You've got Purdue, who, I mean, shout out to Purdue because they, lose their regular season finale against Wisconsin, and they were kind of trending downward towards the end of the regular season. But then, they get into Big Ten Conference Tournament as a 7th seed and win the whole thing. And that clearly, I think, got them to jump up to a 2 seed, is winning that conference tournament. So they're now playing some really good basketball. You look at the 3 seed in this it's Gonzaga, but they're losing their best player. So could they be susceptible in this? You got Arkansas as a 4 with John Calipari. Wisconsin, which I think is a dangerous team, but they could be a team that loses right away. And then you got BYU as a 6, and BYU came into this year with a ton of expectations, a ton of hype, and they may have the best player in this tournament or the top draft pick or one of the top draft picks in the upcoming draft, but they have not played up to their potential. It has been, I would say, a down year for BYU considering the high expectations they had coming into this thing. But now that we're at the tournament, could they kind of kick it into gear here a little bit? I know a lot of people are kind of overlooking BYU because of how they played in the regular season, not played up to their expectations. But they still got a boatload of talent, so they could be a really dangerous team here. And then I look at the Midwest region, and if there was, and I'm not trying to knock, Iowa State, who's the 2 seed, or Virginia, who's the 3 seed, Alabama is the 4 seed, and they've got some off-the-court issues going on right now. You got Texas Tech as the 5. But if there was a 1 seed that I think maybe has the, and I hate using this word, easier path to the Final Four, I got Michigan. I think it's set up well for Michigan to get to the Final Four. So here is my entire bracket for you to scrutinize, to laugh at, or maybe say, okay, I get that. So let's start off in the East region, work our way down. East region, South, West, and then Midwest. Okay, so I've got Duke advancing, Ohio State advancing, St. John's advancing, Kansas advancing, Michigan State advancing. Let me start over because I'm skipping teams here because the bracket that I have up here isn't the cleanest here. So let me start over. Duke advancing, Ohio State advancing, St. John's advancing, Kansas advancing. I've got South Florida with a little bit of an upset over Louisville. Michigan State advancing, UCLA advancing, and UConn advancing. So we'll just do each region and then such till we get to the Final Four. I've got Duke over Ohio State. I'm going to go St. John's over Kansas, although it makes me a little bit nervous. St. John's winning the Big East tournament, but last year they kind of disappointed in their tournament run there too. So Michigan State defeating South Florida. and then UConn over UCLA, which means I've got Duke versus St. John's. I'm going to go Duke. I'm a big Rick Pitino fan, though, so I'm kind of rooting for St. John's here over Duke. But I've got Duke advancing, and then UConn versus Michigan State, and then I'm going to go UConn. So it sets up Duke versus UConn, and I've got UConn winning that region and advancing to the Final Four. Let's go down to the South region. I've got Florida winning, Clemson winning, Vanderbilt winning, Nebraska winning, VCU with an upset over North Carolina, Illinois winning, St. Mary's winning, and Houston winning. Then in the round of 32, I've got Florida defeating Clemson, Nebraska defeating Vanderbilt, Illinois defeating VCU, and Houston defeating St. Mary's. A little bit of an upset here. Nebraska over Florida. By the way, Nebraska, that's a weird little history nugget that they haven't won a tournament game. That changes this year. Now I probably jinxed it. But I've got Nebraska beating Florida. And then I've got Illinois beating Houston. So we've got a Big Ten matchup between Nebraska and Illinois to get to the Final Four. And I'm going to go Illinois. I don't know. This one I'm a little bit unsure. I'm a little bit unsure on this one, but I don't like to go all chalk, even though that might be the safest thing to do. But I'm going to go Illinois to the Final Four. So let's go over to the West region then. Arizona, the top seed, got them winning. I've got Utah State winning, Wisconsin winning, Arkansas winning, BYU winning. I do have the Zags winning, even though I'm a little bit nervous. Miami, and then Purdue. I've got Arizona then moving on to the Sweet 16. I've got Wisconsin taking down Arkansas to advance to the Sweet 16. I'm going BYU over the Zags. Zags losing one of their top players. BYU's got too much talent. And I just wonder if people are going to overlook them because of the poor regular season that they had and they advanced to the Sweet 16, or they have an early out. It's either way for BYU. But for my bracket, I'm going to go BYU over the Zags, and then Purdue over Miami, Arizona over Wisconsin, but Purdue over BYU, Arizona over Purdue to advance to the Final Four. And then in the Midwest, I've got Michigan, St. Louis, Texas Tech, Alabama, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, and Iowa State. And then in the round of 32, Michigan wins to advance to the Sweet 16, Texas Tech over Alabama, Virginia over Tennessee, Iowa State over Kentucky. Then I've got Michigan over Texas Tech. Then I've got Iowa State over Virginia, and then Michigan over Iowa State. So Michigan advances to the Final Four. So my Final Four teams, UConn, Illinois, Arizona, and Michigan. I've got UConn defeating Illinois, and I've got Arizona defeating Michigan. Arizona versus UConn, with Arizona winning the national championship. So that's my brackets. Again, if you want to pick, depending on when you're listening to this episode, make sure you head to sportstalk1051.com and get that bracket in. Just click on the Fan Cave tab. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Man Cave podcast. Maybe a little bit of a quicker one and such, but I just wanted to get out some thoughts on the World Baseball Classic. And I've got coming up on the next episode of the Man Cave podcast, I want to talk a little bit more about the state of baseball too, from youth to where it is now, because I think baseball has the advantage of, because there's some talk about some rule changes for baseball, or they're going to experiment with some rule changes in the minor leagues and that. And it's definitely up for debate amongst fans and such. And the big purpose of this is try to draw, I think, younger fans and get younger fans to get into baseball and such. And I just think baseball is in a unique position because really when you think about it, and maybe it's a little bit different now, but it's still the same with my kid. The first organized sport that these kids usually get involved in is T-ball, Little League. So baseball has the advantage to mold these younger fans right away. It's just the problem that they're going to run into, or that they do run into, in my opinion, is as the kids get older and they get to experience more sports and such, how do you keep, baseball has to figure this out, how do you keep those younger fans engaged and still love baseball? Because let's face it too, once they get to baseball and they get a little bit older, maybe they're playing in the outfield and they're like, this is boring, there's not a ball getting hit to me, or they're up to bat, or like, I only got to hit twice. They probably want more action in their games. And that's what I think baseball has to figure out. And I don't know what the answer is, but we'll maybe try to hash that out in the upcoming episode or the next episode of the podcast. But please don't forget to follow and subscribe. Apple, Spotify, 5 stars, positive review on Apple. That would help us out tremendously. And don't forget to click that subscribe button on the YouTube page, because we do our podcast and video as well, plus with the Kid Cave. And we've got some other videos coming down your way. Just give you a little tease. It's a little something we call Game On. More details with that coming up here fairly soon. So, but again, big thanks for tuning in. Feel free to reach out, facebook.com/Dan Kasper Sports, Instagram, Dan Kasper Sports, or hit me up with an email, mancavepodmail@gmail.com. About anything. You got a topic suggestion, you've got a story to tell, or anything like that, send me some emails. Q&As, would love that too. So send those on over. But until next time, I'm Dan Kasper, and a big thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Man Cave Podcast.